Good evening. I'm Wolf Blitzer in for Piers Morgan. We begin with our breaking news in the Middle East, attacks on diplomatic compounds in both Egypt and Libya. Joining me now, Congressman Mike Rogers. He's the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for coming in. And I want to get to 9/11, but there's some breaking news that we're following, and I want to get your sense. An American diplomat apparently has been killed. People stormed the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya. Can you update us what's going on? This is very worrisome.
Yeah, it's my understanding there were nearly 24 armed individuals. That was coordinated explosions and other things. This is the same site, by the way, that was attacked with an IED about maybe a month or so ago. Very, very concerning, and it's concerning that this is a repeat target for them and that this may have been more successful because of the large scale of it. So it's, again, very, very concerning. We have seen al-Qaeda elements in Libya spring up, as we have seen in Tunisia as well. All of that's concerning. We still don't know for sure and for certain yet, as I speak to you today or tonight, who is responsible and who's claimed responsibility. So those details are still unfolding.
Because is it a coincidence or not that this is the anniversary of 9/11 and we see not only what's going on in Libya, but they were attacking the U.S. Embassy in Cairo as well on this day. Is there a connection here?
Well, from what I have led to believe as I stand here, there's no connection yet identified to the coordination. And we've even had some odd descriptions of the one in Egypt. I will say the Egyptian government has not probably done as much as it needs to do right now. I think those discussions are happening and ongoing. But it just shows that with the change of the government and the new direction and the Muslim Brotherhood taking over, there are just huge questions that go unanswered. And their commitment to U.S. Embassy security is very, very concerning. So we saw some changes in the Sinai that disturbed us when it comes to Egypt. Their lack of a real effort to make sure that doesn't explode, if you will. And now this with the U.S. Embassy, we're going to have a lot of hard questions. We're going to have to do a lot more digging to find out who exactly is responsible, if it was coordinated, and if it was related at all, A, to 9/11, and B, to the event in Benghazi, Libya.
I know a lot of your colleagues, Democrats and Republicans in the House, have said to me they're reconsidering supporting, about $1.5 billion a year in military and various forms of economic assistance to Egypt, given the nature of this new Muslim Brotherhood-led government. Are you amongst those ready to pull the plug?
You always have to ask yourself, is the United States and our national security better if we're gone completely or if we have some sphere of influence there? I'm not ready to say that yet. I do believe it ought to be leverage in our discussions as we move forward. And we have got to get some commitments by this government that they're going to do more in Sinai, less to provoke Israel, and they're going to make sure that our U.S. consulates and embassies are protected fully by the Egyptian government. It's unconscionable that this could happen on their watch. So I do think it's a point that it needs to be a point of discussion. We need to be very careful about starting to pull out of places that we don't fully understand the changes that are happening. We don't fully understand the military and intelligence roles there yet and what this new Muslim Brotherhood government is trying to do. We're going to have those discussions, but we should walk into that decision. We shouldn't run into it.
And speaking of Israel, what do you make of this decision, the White House telling the Israeli government, Prime Minister Netanyahu coming to the United States, that the president won't be able to meet with him because of scheduling conflicts? This comes at a time of some tension between the U.S. and Israel over Iran and its nuclear program. What do you make of this?
They are in a really tough neighborhood, and there's a lot of uncertainty now that surrounds them. The one thing that they really clearly need is certainty from the United States on where we are. And this just shows to me that it's just another example that highlights this problem that we're having politically. Our intelligence services are working well. Our cooperation there is great. But our political discussions and cooperation is clearly off kilter. And if we want to prevent a conflict in Iran over their nuclear program, then we better have some certainty about what role the U.S. is playing, their leadership, and our relationship with Israel. We have to work all of that out. I would highly encourage the president to find time for this meeting. Netanyahu, as I understand it, argued he'd fly anywhere in the country to do that. We need to continue dialogue so that we can prevent armed conflict if possible, but we also need Iran to understand that we are absolutely serious, that we will use a military option if they don't stop their nuclear program from advancing.
Senator John McCain and Lindsey Graham, they issued a statement. They were pretty upset about this inability, apparently, for Netanyahu and the president to get together. Let me put it up on the screen and read it to you. It is puzzling that the president can't make time to see the head of state of one of America's closest allies in the world. If these reports are true, the two senators go on to say, the White House's decision sends a troubling signal to our ally Israel about America's commitment at this dangerous and challenging time. You were at a meeting recently. The Israeli Prime Minister was there. The U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Dan Shapiro, was there. This is a U.S.-Israeli strategic cooperation meeting. And apparently there were some angry words exchanged. Just set the record straight for us. What happened there?
Well, I can tell you that clearly I walked out of the meeting with the understanding that the Israeli government is a little frustrated with the lack of certainty on behalf of the United States. And they're trying to move some dialogue so that Israel has a comfort level and the United States has a comfort level. Clearly, that's not happening. And so I think there was some sharp exchange. The U.S. ambassador to Israel was not shouting in the meeting. I think that was reported. But there was certainly a sharp exchange. There was certainly a meeting that was a little elevated in tone, if you will. And again, it was very clear that there was a high degree of frustration with the United States government and that lack of certainty and leadership. And as one of the sole remaining superpowers, it is important that we show that leadership and we have those levels of certainty and we work with our allies. If we don't, well, my fear is Israel's going to back away and say, listen, look what's happening around us. We are going to have to do this on our own. And I think if we all come together on this, we probably can prevent a military action, but we have to prevent it not by beating up on Israel, but by making sure Iran understands that there is a real consequence, a military consequence, if necessary, if they don't stop their program.
All this unfolding on this, the 11th anniversary of 9/11. Mike Rogers is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks very much.
Well, thanks for having me.